Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe P. Zapia, and today we're back mock drafting. That's right, a PPR mock draft. We've got 12 teams here, and to help us get ready for the season, D-Bro, Derek Brown, the King of Bros, Andrew Erickson, the Undertaker himself, and the leader of the flock. That's right, Flock Fantasy's own YouTube legend, Mason Dodd, is joining us today, one of our favorite folks. Mason, I see your background. I pine for the days of the fern behind you. I know it has since passed on. What happened to the greenery in the background for you? I missed the days where you looked like you were kind of in the rainforest, because if there's one guy that loves a rainforest, it's Andrew Erickson.
Yeah, I heard y'all before the show. Y'all were saying y'all went to Rainforest Cafe of all places. Well, what was the story with that?
That's the story with that is Andrew Erickson's childhood. At least some great moments took place at the Rainforest Cafe, and there happened to be one still functioning in New Jersey, close to the train station. I picked up Andrew. If you want to see all of the videos and pictures from that experience, Andrew was like he was like a kid in a candy store. He was unbelievable. He was so excited. Andrew, I gotta say, now that we're here finally after the dust has settled from a very fun weekend of drafting and rainforesting, Did you get everything you wanted out of your Rainforest Cafe experience, including you at least got some of the takeaway glasses? We did get glasses and drinks that you could take home with you. So now you can remember that experience forever.
Exactly. Every time I need a glass of water, I'm like, oh, I'm going to drink in my fancy Rainforest Cafe glass. So I'll forever remember Uncle Joey taking me to the Rainforest Cafe and reflecting on it. It was probably best that we did have your two daughters there with us, or else that would have been kind of weird if it was just me and you hanging out at Rainforest Cafe. My wife was reflecting on that after the fact. I was like, you know what? You're right. That was a really smart for us to bring his daughters, because that would have been weird.
Yes, bring kids with you so you give the illusion at least that like you're not just here for the adults necessarily. Derek Brown wasn't there at all. Very depressing. Airlines just screwed him. Yeah. Planes were delayed and canceled. It was a grumpy man, but you were there in spirit. Also, follow me at Joe P. Zapia 17 for the full children's story of Derek Brown's big day out in New York City. You don't want to miss that. D-Bro, what was it like to live vicariously at the draft through a stuffed animal?
Some of the best pictures and photo work I've ever been a part of. I'd like to say you did capture my best sides as well as a glittery crotch.
Why the crotch was
truly
glittery.
Appreciate that as far as the zoom ins below the belt too, though, Joe. Thank you.
Well, it is what it is. But today we have got an incredible mock draft going on with our friends on our Discord. Again, join it, fantasypros.com/chat. It is free to join. And of course, if you're one of our premium subscribers, you get to do a whole lot more over there. And that's part of the gig, is we do all these mock drafts on Mondays. We have free mock draft Monday going on where there's a ton of mock drafts. We're all involved in there as well. Today, we have a great group joining us here. We got T-Mac, of course, Mason Dodds at the 2 spot. Agent Shep is at 3. I'm at 4. Young City is at 5. Yaya is at 6. And then Andrew Erickson went right in front of Derek Brown. That's going to be a good time. We've got Durs, Flying Hawaiian, Rice is in the draft, and at the turn, Trusted Venom, who's been with us for a few drafts. So great group of folks here. Mason Dodd, I know we are right in the thick of things. I'm going to begin the draft here. You chose the 2 spot, so you had the whole board basically to yourself. What was it about the 2 spot that you love so much? Are you somebody that's like, hey, it's CMC or Lamb, or is there some other approach that you like to take there at the 2?
I'm keeping it simple. It's CMC or Lamb. And to be honest with you, I just didn't want to be next to y'all in the draft. Y'all and I was left with, okay, do I want the end or the beginning? And I've probably had 1,000 questions so far, I'm sure y'all have, of like where the best places to pick this year. And in my mind, it's anywhere but 9, 10, 11, 12. The end of the draft, I hate. And the earlier you are, I think just the more premium play you're going to get, which obviously makes sense.
But Mason, also the earlier you are, the sort of premium guys that are left at that 2-3 turn. That's how I'm looking at it as the draft is kicking off here in just a few seconds. I know Mason's going to make his pick. Obviously, we kind of know where he's going because CMC went first, so I guess it's going to be Lamb. So let's talk about Lamb, but also talk about what it's like when you come back to that turn, because typically you do have some of those high-end wide receiver 2/wide receiver 1s on the lower spectrum still available, but you also have some really good talented running back as well.
Yeah, I mean, the 2-3 turn in my mind, I honestly think that the player quality you're going to get there is kind of comparable to what's in the beginning of the second and the middle of the second round, at least right now with what I've seen in my own drafts. So, I mean, we'll see how the draft plays out. Like you said, I already took Lamb at 2. I think he has a really nice combo of just the highest floor in fantasy and a really high ceiling this year. So we'll see what happens at the 2-3 turn, but I feel comfortable with it.
All right, so after Lamb, Tyreek Hill goes at 3. I took Amon-Ra at 4. It's full point PPR. Again, we got the 2 RBs, the 3 wideouts, the flex, the defense, 1 quarterback today. For more quarterback conversations too, we'll do some more super flex drafts. Don't worry, we've got a lot of those in the pipeline. Again, if you want to, go ahead and get ready for your drafts. This is the best way to do it, is to use the Draft Wizard product. In fact, all weekend, Andrew and I were preparing for the flex draft this weekend, the big expert league draft, and I was using the draft intel, and it helped a ton because it literally crafted the robots that we're doing the tendencies of guys like Jeff Ratcliffe, guys like Adam Ronis, the people that are in that draft with us. Andrew Erickson robots are amazing. And it really let me know kind of what players were going to be available in those first few rounds and how to approach things. And sure enough, we went in there and I think we came out very successful. So if we're using these tools, you should be using them too, because it will help elevate your game. And it's a great way to not just kind of use a mock draft simulator where it's just ADP, but really get a feel for what it's going to be like in your drafts with those real life people. I'm on Ross St. Brown at 4. I was contemplating between him and Chase. Chase goes next at number 5, then Bijan at 106. Andrew Erickson, you got your guy at 107. Breece Hall, let's talk about it.
Yeah, I agree with Mason's point where he's talking about how you don't want to pick at the end. And I feel the same way because I want to come out of my draft with either Jamar Chase, Bijan, or Breece Hall when I'm picking not at the very, very top. So for me, Breece Hall is my RB1 this year. I think that he's set up to smash in this New York Jets offense. Look, last year, the only running back that scored more points in PPR was Christian McCaffrey. And everything about the Jets situation is so much better than it was last year. With Rodgers back, the offensive line is healthy. I think Breece Hall's in for a career year, so I love getting him as the third running back off the board and as my first overall pick.
D-Bro, you're coming up for another pick here. At 108, you selected Justin Jefferson. We'll talk about your next pick in just a moment, but it feels like those first 10 picks, the way they've gone here in this draft, because A.J. Brown goes next and then Jahmyr Gibbs at 10. To me, those are the top 10. Those are the guys that I want to start a fantasy team with. Marvin Harrison's the other one who's right on that fringe. D-Bro, you went back-to-back wide receivers in the first round, Justin Jefferson, and the second, Drake London. Let's talk about that, and then we'll recap the rest of the picks.
I mean, I love when you're at the back half of the first round, just double tapping wide receiver here. And can we also shout out to the beautiful dev team and everybody over Fantasy
so
Pros?
good.
The Draft Wizard layout is just, it's gotten a spit shine. It looks amazing, people. So both these selections, so easy for me at this point of the draft. I love Justin Jefferson because if we weren't so concerned about the quarterback situation, could we also craft an easy narrative? He should not be going this late in any draft, guys.
Oh, what the Derek? I'm sorry. Which player are you talking about? You're talking about Jefferson?
With Jefferson. Yeah, if we weren't so worried about his quarterback situation with Darnold and McCarthy,
I think that
we've seen
bears
Jefferson
witness,
crush.
though, doesn't it, Derek? I mean, it is Sam Darnold, and it is what that transition looks like for JJ. It's uncertain, if anything. I think that's fair, don't you?
I don't, in the sense of when you look at the splits with Jefferson with and without Cousins, he was pacing for almost 2,000 receiving yards on both sides of the coin. And so for me, I think we are way overblowing the quarterback concerns, considering we already saw KOC really. I mean, look, come on. Do we think Darnold can be worse than Dobbs and Mullins? And Jefferson was still crushing as the wide receiver 4. And like I said, on pace for over 2,000 receiving yards, regardless of however you split up last season. So I'm not worried about Jefferson. I've moved him up in my ranks.
Okay. So Jefferson's up in the ranks for Derek Brown, which you can find at fantasypros.com/rankings. AJ Brown goes next, then Jahmyr Gibbs, Garrett Wilson, and Puka Nacua close out round 1. Starting round 2, Marvin Harrison, my dude, at 201, then Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Chris Olave, D-Bro took Drake London. Obviously, we know D-Bro's love of London. And then the man who is driving the Waddle train even harder than I am. It is Andrew Erickson. So Waddle at 206. This is exactly where I feel like you want to be. I guess here's the question. Andrew, I love Waddle as a great number 2, but you think already you're okay with him being your number 1 wide receiver.
I mean, that's where we were drafting him last year. He was going right in this range last year, and then he got hurt and didn't score a bunch of touchdowns. So I'm just writing off last year as a fluke. He's super talented. He was a wide receiver 1 his first 2 years in the NFL, and he did it in 2 completely different ways. One was on volume, one was on efficiency. Is this backfield going to score 30 touchdowns again? No. Is Jalen Waddle going to score 4 touchdowns again? No. So I think he's going to score double-digit touchdowns, go over 1,000 yards again. And we see these best offenses, they can support 2 wide receiver ones. Why can't it be Miami with how concentrated the target share always seems to be between Tyreek Hill and a Jalen Waddle? If Hill takes any step back whatsoever, that's going to benefit Waddle. So I think that he has, again, I've said this before, perfect balance of a ceiling play and a floor play with Jalen Waddle in round 2.
Incredible wide receiver run here from picks 204 to 209. Olave, London, Waddle, Pittman, Devontae Adams. Then I continued on with Nico Collins. Agent ended up taking Kyron Williams. Then Mr. Fantasy Flock himself took Josh Allen, Travis Etienne at the turn, then Patrick Mahomes. So 2 QBs off the board. Devon Achane, who I was going to pick, and you stole him out from under me. So Josh Allen, Devon Achane, let's talk about those 2 picks here. Mason, why did you go quarterback? And then talk about the upside of Devon Achane and maybe the risk involved as well.
2 things. One, if you look at the quarterback position for the past few years in comparison to what you had 5-6 years ago, no quarterback really throughout NFL history has had the fantasy upside that you're seeing from Josh Allen. 4 straight years with over 390 points. He can score 400 points in a given season. And if you have a mid quarterback one, they just simply can't compare with that if you're looking at the points per game drop off. Achane, I think, has a high ceiling based off how good this Miami Dolphins offense projects to be, with the fact that he was pretty much the most efficient running back in NFL history last year. Now, the concern is, if you look at the size, you don't know how many touches per game he can really handle. And we know efficiency is highly volatile from a year-to-year perspective. So when you take Achane, you're hoping that the touches per game are able to go up despite his size, even if the efficiency were to go down. Taking him in the middle of the second round, I'm not a big fan of, but getting him in the third, I'm completely fine with.
Yeah, look, if you didn't take him, he was probably going to me. Laporta goes in between our 2 picks, and then I selected Derrick Henry. I don't care if it's PPR. All I care about are touchdowns and yards and getting the volume, and King Henry is my hero. In fact, I took him this weekend in the 3rd round of that Superflex draft in the Flex League, and I'm very happy he made it to me. Now, that was a half PPR, but still, I don't care if it's half. I don't care if it's full. Derrick Henry is still a hero in my book at the RB position, especially now that he is a Raven. Brandon Ayuk goes next. Lots of rumors swirling. We'll see if anything comes to fruition in terms of him getting moved. Cooper Kupp goes at 306. 307. Rashad White, one of my guys, my RB2 from this weekend's draft. Erickson, are you warming up to the Rashad White? I feel like he is one of the most underappreciated assets at the running back position. If you're going wide receiver early, Rashad White is a really nice consolation prize. Now, he is your 2nd running back already in this PPR. Let's talk about that strategy.
Yeah, I'm changing it up a little bit. Usually I go with the hero RB approach. So usually I don't look at running backs after I draft someone like a Breece Hall, but I just kind of want to change it up here and see. Again, I like Rashad White as a running back in a vacuum. I think that he's going to see a ton of volume in this offense. I think that he can actually take a step forward. You know, the big knock on Rashad White is, well, his yards per carry is not very good. But what do we see year over year? That yards per carry is one of the worst numbers that you can cite as projecting future rushing production for a running back. Liam Cohen, I'm excited about him, what he can do in Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers have upgraded their offensive line. What if Rashad White is better as a rusher? Because he has nowhere really to go but up. I get they drafted Bucky Irving, but he's so involved in the passing game. I still think that he's the clear red zone back. So even if this Buccaneers offense is just average, I think Rashad White can go well over 1,000 rushing yards while adding in 50 or 60 catches. So I think Rashad White, again, as a running back, can get in the middle rounds. I think he's a really good value.
Okay, after you select White, Isaiah Pacheco goes to Debro. Then we have DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Travis Kelce, Malik Neighbors at the turn. Jalen Hurts off the board at 401. Then DK Metcalf, Debo Samuel, Joe Mixon, and then, of course, Trey McBride on schedule to Derek Brown. So, Debro, you took Pacheco, somebody that I know a lot of us feel is a really solid RB1 this year in terms of return on investment, in terms of the offense he plays in. And then Trey McBride, a guy at tight end who could challenge for that number 1 overall spot. So let's break down these 2 picks.
Well, first of all, you wiped out the top of my queue, you and Mr. Fantasy Flock over here. I had Achane and Henry at the top of my queue, so it was sad to see them go, but I figured it was going to happen. Pacheco, I look at him, he's still in that hero RB conversation. I mean, we talked about this on previous shows. 3 of the 4 games of the final season, towards the end of the year, whenever McKinnon was out, he played over 70% of the snaps. He averaged 25.5 fantasy points per game. And I'm not saying he's going to do that over the entirety of the season, but we're sleeping on Pacheco's upside, so I was happy to get him there. Kind of modified hero RB strategy. And then Yeah, Trey McBride, he's my tight end 1 overall. I mean, he was producing at top 3 levels when he was the starter weeks 8 through 18. I mean, pick a metric, any metric. If you look at it from a season-long perspective, in that stretch, he would have led the entire, like, he would have continued that the entire season. He would have been the tight end 1 in fantasy points per game at 15 flat. So getting him where I'm getting him in drafts, yes, I'm going to keep pressing the button every single time for McBride.
Every single time. After McBride goes another tight end. Andrew Erickson selected Mark Andrews. So why did you jump in on this tight end run here, Andrew?
Well, I like to get an elite tight end when I'm doing these types of builds. So Mark Andrews, for me, that's who I think is going to be tight end 1 this year. So again, I'm always trying to gauge when to take Mark Andrews based on, well, Laporte always goes in front of him. You see in this draft, obviously McBride went in front of him. You saw Travis Kelce. So when I see those guys start to go off the board, I'm like, okay, the board is now looking at tight ends. Can I snag Andrews here? Do I want to wait till round 5? Now we'll find out and see if that was ultimately the right decision or not, if we see another tight end go before my next pick. But I think that Andrews has tight end 1 overall upside, and I don't want to miss out on it.
Certainly makes sense to me after those 2 tight ends go off the board. Stephon Diggs at 407, Lamar Jackson right before me. Young City sniped me there, but that's okay. I pivoted to George Pickens, who I love what's going on there at Steeler camp. I got a feeling Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback, and I think it's going to be a very different look for the Pittsburgh Steelers than Russell Wilson would have been. Agent selects Devonta Smith at 410, then 411, we have Josh Jacobs going to Mason, followed by 2 wide receivers at the turn at 412, Amari Cooper at 5-1, Zay Flowers, then back to you, Mace, for Kincaid. So Josh Jacobs at 411. Any concerns with this running back in this new system there with some challengers? And let's talk about the upside of Kincaid, what he might be this year in this Buffalo Bills offense.
Couple things. One, Jacobs gets paid an amount that screams starting running back for 2024. 2, this will be the best offense Josh Jacobs has ever been a part of. 3, he's much younger than you'd expect, drafted in 2019, but was only 20 years old coming out of Alabama. And 4, Marshawn Lloyd was injured during training camp, so it sounds like Marshawn Lloyd's behind schedule. And we know A.J. Dillon's not a great pass catcher, so I think Jacobs actually gets third down work this year. So Jacobs, in my mind, is a clear tier ahead of the rest of the running backs that are available. So I'm going to take him before that running back tier dries up. Now, of course, we're going to have to slam wide receivers in the middle rounds coming up. And then with Kincaid, I personally view him in the same tier as McBride. It's the same tier of Mark Andrews. Both of them go in the middle of round 4. We have Josh Allen already, so I'm already making the bet that this is a great Bills offense yet again. So might as well double down on that bet because I'm never trying to get 6th place in fantasy football. I'm either trying to get first or last. So we're going to double down on our Bills bet, taking Kincaid here, who presumably can be the wide receiver 1 for Josh Allen, and you're getting those points at tight end.
And the question is, what receivers will remain for you? Because I don't know if myself or Yaya in this draft are going to let anybody else draft any, because I'm at 4 wide receivers. Yaya's at 4. I've got Amon-Ra, Nico, George Pickens, and T. Higgins. I'm feeling pretty good about this wide receiver room. After I selected T. Higgins, a value, I think, for sure. Alvin Kamara goes next to Young City. In between Kincaid and T. Higgins, by the way, to James Cook at 503. So 503 Cook, 504 Higgins, 505 Alvin Kamara. Yaya took my other guy, Terry McLaurin. I just took Higgins over McLaurin just based on quarterback. That's it. I love Jaden Daniels, but I know what I'm getting with Joe Burrow. So as my 4, I'd rather take the guy with the better quarterback. Those are the kind of decision-making processes I think that are very important to discuss here on the show. And as you're going through all of your processes, make sure that you're using them not only in fantasy, but maybe also in the wagering market. If you haven't done it before, give DraftKings a try, because right now, if you download the DraftKings Sportsbook right now, you can use that promo code FantasyPros, and new customers get 150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. And you can bet on anything. You can bet on your favorite team to win the Super Bowl. You could bet it on something fun in preseason, whatever it is. Of course, we're going to have 5 days a week of our Betting Pros show this year. Subscribe to the YouTube channel over on Betting Pros. Myself, Andrew Erickson, Terrell Furman Jr. It's going to be a fantastic time over there. We're going to help you win some cash this NFL season, but do it over on the DraftKings Sportsbook right now. Again, official sports betting partner of the NFL. Use that promo code FantasyPros only at DraftKings. The crown is yours. After I took Higgins, Kamara, McLaurin, Christian Kirk to you, Andrew Erickson, then Anthony Richardson to Derek Brown. Debro is very happy about that, I assume. Tank Dell goes next. Keenan Allen, Ken Walker, Aaron Jones close it out. Then Ramondre Stevenson on the turn. Rashee Rice. Somebody is listening to Andrew Erickson posts on Twitter. I can tell you that. James Conner goes at 603. Stroud at 604. Chris Godwin to Debro. So Debro, you got Anthony Richardson. You got Chris Godwin. Certainly, I think Godwin, a guy we all feel is being a little undervalued, especially moving back into the slot. And the lottery pick that is Anthony Richardson, this has to feel pretty good. If you don't get Lamar, Richardson is that other lottery ticket there that really could help you have an incredible season. Let's talk about those two picks.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm loving how this team is shaping up so far. Hero running back approach. Now I'm walking out of this last round with 3 wide receivers tight end, RB1 and the Anthony Richardson. I mean, I've said it before. I'll say it again. Anthony Richardson has QB1 overall upside this year. We know he's going to run. This Colts offense is going to be way, way better than I think a lot of people are giving it credit for. So picking him there and then plus going with Godwin, I know the volume is going to be there for Godwin. It's just a question of where can his upside land this year? I think we're going to see some regression from touchdowns from Mike Evans in the direction of Chris Godwin. If that happens this year, Godwin is going to be a smash value.
All right, potential smash value there. And Erickson, you went wide receiver after Godwin. You took Deontay Johnson, another guy where the volume's certainly going to be there. It's the quality we're concerned with. What can Canales do for this offense and Bryce Young to make Deontay Johnson a really valuable piece this year?
Well, Deontay Johnson can get open. So we know that. And that's not what Carolina had last year. That's not what the receivers Bryce Young had last year. Jonathan Mingo could not create any separation. And when we saw Bryce Young successful at Alabama, well, he had really good wide receivers that could get open and create separation. So Deontay Johnson, yes, he's not without his flaws. Sometimes gets the dropsies. But what has he shown at every place he's gone, especially with the Pittsburgh Steelers, is he gets open. And this team needs that. And last year, right? Adam Thielen was a wide receiver 1 for the majority of the season before things kind of tailed off. So if we're putting Deontay Johnson in that wide receiver role where Bryce Young was at his worst last year, and we still saw Thielen produce for fantasy, I think Deontay Johnson in a full PPR, again, pairing him, I went a little bit later with receivers here, so I'm looking for those PPR cheat codes. That's why I drafted Christian Kirk. That's why I drafted Deontay Johnson, who in half PPR, yeah, I don't know where the touchdowns maybe aren't going to be there for those guys, but in a full PPR, I think those guys are really good values.
Hollywood Brown goes next, followed by David Montgomery. I selected Zamir White as my number 2 running back, a guy that I just think is going to get the full run of the show over in Vegas. That's exactly the guy I was hoping to get. He made it to me, so I'm very happy with my hero RB, big wide receiver build, staying on brand for Joey P. Agent Shep took Jaden Reed, and then Flock took Calvin Ridley. We'll get to Mason's pick in a second because I am enraged because T-Mac took Kyle Pitts right from under me. I thought he would make it back. He did not. I flew too close to the sun, unfortunately. Just was not meant to be. We'll see what the pivot is as Mac is going to make their second choice and then back to the fantasy flock. But again, coming back to Zamir White, I'm looking for volume when I'm looking for that RB2 spot and a little competition. He has both of those things, and you know that they're going to want to run the football. Xavier Worthy, the next pick from Mason. So, Mason, you doubled up on wide receiver. How does the Hopkins injury here potentially impact Calvin Ridley in your mind on your draft board? And what is the upside, in your opinion, of Xavier Worthy this season?
I think you have to bump up Ridley. Now, the initial reports are saying Hopkins is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. That puts him in a timeline where maybe he's back weeks 2, 3, 4. He's going into his 12th season, right? So it is very difficult to project these guys once they get this old and start dealing with lower body injuries. I think it opens the door for Calvin Ridley. Titans offense, probably pretty bad this year, but this coaching staff has repeatedly said that they are going to air it out. So I think it puts Ridley in an interesting spot with upside for Will Levis. And then with Xavier Worthy, I am concerned that he may profile to be a field stretching option at the NFL level that helps the Chiefs more than he helps your fantasy team, because I don't know how many targets he's going to be able to see at his size. But ultimately, he is a wide receiver that was just selected in round 1 of the draft, attached to the best quarterback that I personally have ever seen. So I'm going to go ahead. I will take him in the 7th when I'm just shooting for any upside I can find at wide receiver. We're obviously, after taking CeeDee Lamb at the very beginning, kind of punted wide receiver through 4 rounds.
Joe Burrow goes next at 703, and then I select Evan Ingram at 704. I'm looking for a guy who's going to get a ton of targets, in my opinion. In Jacksonville, again, volume is king. Tight ends are starting to go, and I don't want to be outside of that room looking in. Pitts was my target. The pivot is Evan Ingram. Maybe a little less thrilling, but he's coming off a great season. Can he repeat it? I actually think he can. And I think if you follow the money, and that's what I like to do also many times, that'll tell you what the plan is for many teams. They're paying Evan Ingram, which means he is once again going to get a fair amount of work. He was actually tight end 2 last year. I think people forget that. 114 receptions, just 4 touchdowns. But again, if he comes anywhere close to that 140 mark, again in targets, I think this is a very good value pick. Young City takes DeAndre Swift at 705. The other guy was thinking about Christian Watson. So Yaya and I continue to just battle back and forth of how many wide receivers we could take, but Yaya wins. Yaya has officially taken more wide receivers than me. Love the Watson pick. Doing a great job. What a fantastic heavy wide receiver build in that 807, that 07 pick there. We have our friend Andrew Erickson going next here. Jalen Warren goes to you. So getting some more depth in that running back room. How do you see that Steelers backfield working out this year? I know last year it was very much a split, but very much a strange offense because of the quarterback situation. What do you think that running back room looks like in 2024?
I think it's going to have a lot of fantasy points. I'm not so sure exactly how things are going to be distributed, but I know that their offense coordinator, Arthur Smith, wants to run the football. I know Jalen Warren is the more explosive of the 2 running backs. I know Jalen Warren's going to be used more in the passing game than him and Najee. So it would not surprise me at all if Jalen Warren outscores Najee Harris. It does depend on how they deploy the guys in the red zone. Last year, we saw Arthur Smith use Tyler Algier a lot in the red zone. Does he do that with Najee? And that those quotes that Najee said about, yeah, they didn't pick up my 5th-year option because they didn't know how they were going to use me in the offense. That was after they hired Arthur Smith. That was after they drafted a bunch of offensive linemen in the NFL draft. So for him to reflect on that and say, "Man, I don't know how they're going to use me." Well, it seems clear to us that they should use him as a early down grinder, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. So I'm just going to buy into Jalen Warren. I have him ranked over Najee Harris, and they usually go pretty close to each other in the drafts, like we saw here. But for me, I just prefer Jalen Warren, especially in the full PPR.
D-Bro, I know you're up next, so I'm going to let you make your other pick here. 708, you selected Brian Robinson. No surprise there. Najee Harris at 709, Devin Singletary at 710, and then Raheem Mostert and Tony Pollard to end the 7th round. To begin the 8th round, Lad McConkey off the board, followed by Javonte Williams, who all of a sudden is getting some very positive buzz out of camp. The fly-in Hawaiian selects Cortland Sutton at 803, and then Tajee Spears at 804. Back to D-Bro with another RB. So Brian Robinson, Jonathan Brooks, they now join Isaiah Pacheco. So you've built out the running back room. We're hearing some rumors now that Jonathan Brooks could start to get some work as early as week 4. But is that fool's gold, D-Bro? Didn't we hear that before? We had a great conversation the other day, actually, on Out of Bounds about that, where Scott Bogman was discussing Javonte Williams. We heard all this last year. Javonte Williams, everything's looking good. He's going to be back early, all those things. And then it just never materialized. Why is it going to be different for Jonathan Brooks this year?
I think you look at their injuries are very different. Looking at the devastating knee injury that Javonte sustained versus the clean ACL tear versus Jonathan Brooks. And really, I'm still willing to buy in on Jonathan Brooks, especially after that news, because while I didn't let him slip in this draft because I believe in the upside and he fit my team build, I think he's going to slip a little bit in ADP and in some drafts, especially depending on which host site that you're drafting on. And I think he's a perfect RB3 type of upside pick because look at the room I've already assembled, guys. I've got Pacheco and B-Rob locked in at the top 2 spots. Brian Robinson Jr. still getting disrespected by everybody. I love both of those guys to fill those spots, and Brooks is the guy where I can draft him as an RB3, maybe your RB4, and so you're not asking him to fill a starting lineup spot at the beginning of the season. You're playing the long game and the upside of what he can provide for you middle of the season, especially for the stretch run.
After you selected Jonathan Brooks, you went quarterback Andrew Kyler Murray at 806. Feels like a pretty good value there to me.
Sorry, I was getting distracted by all of Yaya's wide receivers. I think he has 7 now.
I don't know. Yaya has set the cheat sheet to all wideouts. That's what it is. And let me tell you, the cheat sheet feature also this weekend, a huge help. Sync your leagues for free. Download Draft Wizard. I'm telling you, folks, we used it in the draft. It was incredible to have right there with you, not only to prepare, but also during the draft itself. Doesn't matter if you're on Yahoo, if you're on Sleeper, if you're on ESPN, any of them. It will all connect to it. It'll help give you the insights. You can create cheat sheets. I created a cheat sheet that was basically myself and Andrew Erickson and Derek Brown because I was in the draft with them. So I wanted to see how they would value players. It was a huge help. Use all these features to help you in your drafts. Andrew, now that you had some time to see all the wide receivers that none of us can draft because Yaya takes them all, Kyler Murray, value? I would think so.
Yeah, I really like getting to Kyler Murray here in round 8. it kind of feels like a late round quarterback, but he's not a late round quarterback. He should be up there next to CJ Stroud and Joe Burrow. So I feel like I got a really good value with him. That's why I like the late round quarterback approach, because I feel like in certain draft rooms you can get a Kyler Murray in round 8. And what have we seen from what have we not seen from him where we could see him being a potential QB1? No, he's a rushing quarterback. You've upgraded the weapons that he's throwing to. Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride. I like Kyler Murray a lot this year. He's not entering the year rehabbing any type of season-long injury. I think really the only thing that's stopping Kyler Murray is just his health overall. Like, he hasn't been a guy who's really played a full season in the NFL, at least not for a while. So that's my only concern with Murray. So I think that he has a ton of upside, and getting him in round 8 feels like a steal.
Feels like a steal for Andrew Erickson. I would kind of agree. Rome Odunze at 807, then 808 DeAndre Hopkins. I took Dak Prescott at 809, and then Zach Moss, Jordan Addison to Mason, Brian Thomas at the turn, along with Chase Brown at 901. Keon Coleman, that's what I was going to take. You stole him from me. So Addison, Mason, how do you feel about him with Kirk Cousins now gone? And again, questions in terms of what that quarterback's going to look like in terms of, is it going to be Sam Darnold for a long period of time or a short period of time, and what that change off looks like. And then Keon Coleman, somebody that I think there's a big range of outcomes for, and a lot of people are in, like Scott Bogman, and some other people are out, some other analysts here. Let's talk about Keon Coleman, because you've got a few rookies now in Worthy and Coleman in your wide receiver room.
Yeah, so essentially at this point of the draft, I'm shooting for upside, right? Like, I understand Jordan Addison's situation's worse this year than it was the year prior. But what's actually funny is if you look at Addison's rookie season and you look at the wide receivers that at a similar age, 22 year, the comps are Jordan Addison, Hakeem Nicks, Larry Fitzgerald, Juju Smith-Schuster, T. Higgins, CeeDee Lamb, Percy Harvin, Jeremy Maclin, Elijah Moore. I mean, you just have stud receiver after stud receiver after stud receiver. So I would make the argument if the situation wasn't significantly worse for Jordan Addison, who's a former Biletnikoff winner, goes round 1 of the NFL draft, great prospect. I think this would be someone that would be going in rounds like 3 or 4, to be completely honest with you. But obviously, you have to get a big discount based off suspension concerns and how his situation's much worse this year than it was last year. And then Keon Coleman in the 9th is a borderline round 1 NFL draft pick attached to arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So I honestly didn't really like him as a prospect, but I don't think it matters if you're going to look at a cost where he's going between Chase Brown and Austin Eckler this year, especially where I'm hunting wide receiver upside in the middle rounds. I think it's a no-brainer pick, especially when I have Josh Allen.
Makes a lot of sense to me. All right, continuing on the draft board here, after Keon Coleman went to Mason, Austin Eckler went, then I took Tyler Lockett at 904. Again, just kind of value on the board. We'll see. They say that they want to throw the ball more with this new coaching staff. Perhaps they will. Zeke goes at 905. Yaya goes with Jaden Daniels, finally a non-wide receiver. Curtis Samuel to you, Erickson, with your first of 2 picks. We can recap yours in a second. Jerome Ford to Derek Brown at 908, and Josh Palmer at 99. Jordan Love, Jameson Williams, Nick Chubb, and then George Kittle begins the 10th round, followed by Brock Purdy at 1002. Jacoby Myers, Ferguson, and Josh Downs. Debro, Ford and Downs. You took Downs from me in the flex draft on Saturday. I was bummed. He went earlier than I thought he would. That's because of you. So good on you. But here you go. A player that I think did not get enough credit for how good his rookie season was. And Jerome Ford, a player that's looking like, at least for the first 6 weeks, is going to be getting a lot of volume.
Yeah, I mean, and again, looking at the complexion of a team, or drafting the complements of Brooks and Jerome Ford. One of those guys could be an RB2 or flex play for me. And looking at early season versus late season production, I think I love drafting both of those guys for my roster build. And Josh Downs, I agree with you, Joey. He's getting slept on. It's too much. Mm-hmm. I think people were talking about, or were not giving enough credit to how much fall off he had after the knee injury in week 9. Weeks 1 through 8, he had over 2.0 yards per route run, almost 19% target share. He was humming along as the wide receiver 36 in fantasy points per game. If I think Anthony Richardson, I drafted him here, can be that type of guy, a difference maker, Downs should be coming along for the ride.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Andrew, let's break down some of your picks here, the last 2 that you made. Curtis Samuel and then Romeo Doubs. So Doubs certainly can be a contributor in that Green Bay offense. Curtis Samuel, a guy maybe upside for more. You've talked a lot about what his 2024 season might look like, but let's talk about Samuel and Doubs for a moment.
Yeah, these picks in particular aren't my favorite ultimate upside going to win you your fantasy league, but they're players that to me can fill in roles on my particular build, right? Because I didn't go with a lot of receivers early on, so there are going to be potential question marks. What if I suffer an injury? If I lose Christian Kirk or Deontay Johnson, who are values that I'm looking at in the PPR format. So the way I see Samuel, every single year, he has stretches of 4 to 5 weeks of really good production. If you look like, oh, did you know Curtis Samuel leads the Bills in target share after week 5? That's probably going to happen at some point. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to sustain the entire season, especially when he's holding off a guy like Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, but he knows this Joe Brady offense. So I think that if I'm in a pinch early on, I can use Curtis Samuel, and the same thing with Romeo Doubs. When you're betting on, okay, who's going to lead the Green Bay Packers in routes run this season? Well, all indications are it's probably going to be Romeo Doubs. Whether that means he's going to produce like that, that's no guarantee. But again, someone that I can fill into a role on my roster that I need just based on the fact that I went heavier at the other positions and not necessarily wide receiver. So I am valuing a little bit more with the floor here with some of these guys I've taken.
Chuba Hubbard goes next at 10:07, then Gus Edwards at 10:08. I selected Trey Benson at 10:09, a project that to me that could certainly over time not only eat into the James Conner workload, but maybe even overtake him depending on the health of James Conner, which in the past has been an issue, but the last couple of years has been pretty good. However, it's another year in the league. Some more running backs going right after, too. So I'm glad that I went ahead and selected Benson. Mike Williams goes next at 10:10. Then Zach Charbonnet at 10:11. That was the one I was going back and forth on. Mason, let's talk about Zach Charbonnet for a moment, because that's a guy that another one that it's going to be different this year in 2024, potentially, of what we saw last year out of him. Do you think that Charbonnet can emerge as the guy, or do you think that this is really kind of, once again, as you said, shooting for upside and hoping that maybe Walker struggles or Charbonnet gets more opportunities?
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff going back to your Tyler Lockett decision that I think honestly kind of plays the same for Charbonnet. Different coaching staff, they may throw the ball more. Charbonnet's a better pass catcher than Kenneth Walker. Different coaching staff creates ambiguity where we don't know exactly what the roles will be for these guys. So I think it potentially opens the door for Charbonnet to have a larger workload. I also personally think Zach Charbonnet would have been the running back one in this draft class if he was selected this year. Great prospect, can play all 3 downs. If Kenneth Walker were to go down, I would project Zach Charbonnet to be a low-end RB1, high-end RB2 in fantasy. So personally, I think it's a no-brainer pick. Blake Corum at the 11:02. Should be a good offense. A little bit of ambiguity if you look at what the coaching staff's discussed here with the Rams. Clearly, we're expecting Kyron to be the starter, but I wouldn't be surprised if Corum has a role. And if Kyron were to go down, I think he has a lot of upside.
This is sort of, I think, the sweet spot for running backs when we're talking about return on investment, Mace, because if you look at rounds 9 through 11 here, you've got the Chase Browns, right? You've got maybe Eckler bounces back. You've got Jerome Ford, Zach Charbonnet, Trey Benson, Rico Dowdle, who also went in the 11th round now, Blake Corum, who you just selected, Jaleel McLaughlin. To me, this is where this is so much of the reason why I am so early wide receiver, because I feel like you can take a few of these guys, and if just one of them hits, you're in really good shape. If more than one of them hits, you could really make a difference with these picks. Do you feel the same way, that this is sort of that it doesn't cost you anything to find out situation in rounds 9 through 11 when it comes to the running back position?
For sure. I mean, these are guys that have wide ranges of outcomes, right? Which is personally what I'm looking for in fantasy. I think you could go with like a more typical standard, say like boring selection. Like you could take Jerry Jeudy here. You kind of know what you're going to get with Jerry Jeudy, but I don't think he has the same type of upside that you're going to see with the running backs in this range. So personally, I love the idea of slamming wide receivers in the middle rounds. That way, when you're getting here to the later rounds, you can kind of take those running backs that have low floors but high ceilings.
Also, after Charbonnet goes to Mason, we had Brandon Cooks at 10:12, and then at 11:01, Antonio Gibson, Blake Corum, we just discussed, Rico Dowdle, one pick away from me, who I believe is going to be the Cowboys running back now. It's just starting to feel like that worm is turning in camp if you were reading the tea leaves. Jaleel McLaughlin at 11:04. We'll see if all the recent Javonte Williams news is hype. If it's fact or if it's fiction, we'll figure it out. David Njoku at 11:05, followed by Brock Bowers, 2 of the last tight ends on the board here at the tight end 1 spot. Then J.K. Dobbins. Look at you, Erickson, righting the wrongs of the flex weekend. Andrew Erickson was so ready to take J.K. Dobbins. He missed it. He took Jerome Ford. J.K. Dobbins went with the next pick. He was talking and having cocktails, and the next thing you know, J.K. was off the board. How does it feel to get him here and kind of make up for lost time this weekend, Andrew?
How does it feel to get him in a draft that doesn't count for anything? I mean, it doesn't feel nearly as good because I made the mistake of missing out on J.K. Dobbins in the flex draft. But hey, I still like J.K. Dobbins a lot. I think he has a lot of upside. Gus Edwards has been dealing with some weird injury for the offseason. They've been kind of slow playing him. I mean, if it comes to injuries when it comes to this Chargers team, we're not getting any information. John Harbaugh's basically just saying, yeah, he's dealing with something. Harbaugh, that's all he's saying. He's dealing with something. But at least right now, Dobbins doesn't look like he's dealing with anything. So, yeah, I feel good about him in an offense that wants to run the ball. I think that he's healthy. He's the most talented running back on that roster. So, J.K. Dobbins in round 11, I think all the risk is baked in if he doesn't end up being healthy for the season.
Debro, you're dealing with Marshawn Lloyd at 1108. Let's discuss him as you continue to build out your running back room. You took Robinson, Brooks, Jerome Ford, Marshawn Lloyd. You have a lot of depth there. Why Marshawn Lloyd over guys like, let's say, Tyler Algier, who we saw last year work in that Falcons backfield? I know it's a different coach, but still a guy that's a little bit more proven as opposed to this rookie Lloyd. Why make that kind of pick?
Fully believe in the talent, fully believe in the player. I'm fading Josh Jacobs, have been, remain there, and I was not going to get sniped anymore. After watching you take Jaleel McLaughlin, I was like, no, not going to happen. You and Erickson are not taking him out away from me. I'm getting Marshawn Lloyd on this team.
Fair enough. Avoiding the snipes. That's why these drafts are fun. Ty Chandler at 1109, Dallas Goedert at 1110, one of many tight ends to go here in this run. Because after Rashid Shaheed and Kendre Miller go, we start the 12th round with Cole Kmet, then Pat Frymuth, and TJ Hawkinson. Hawkinson went very early in Saturday's Expert League draft, earlier than I thought he would. That was interesting. Jalen Polk at 1204, and then Pop Douglas to you, D-Bro.
I think we've gone a little bit too far as all the Patriots hate for this offense. I think, look, I do not believe that Drake May is going to start the beginning of this season. I don't even know if we're going to see much of Drake May this entire year. But if that's the case and Jacoby Brissett is under center, I think we're really sleeping on how good he's played whenever he's been given opportunities and the upside in this offense. So, Pop, I know what his role is going to be. Like, we don't know how the rest of that receiving core is going to shake out. Who's going to be starting on the outside around him? Pop Douglas is going to be their starting slot wide receiver. He has the same path as these other guys to possibly lead them in targets this year.
It's interesting because Polk went right before. You think that's a mistake?
I think it is a mistake. I would draft Pop Douglas over him, and I would take the value on Javon Baker over drafting Jalen Polk where he goes.
Erickson, after you took Dobbins, you came back in the 12th with Tyler Algier.
Yeah, Tyler Joe, another running back that I think he's more injury contingent than what the latest reports would lead you to believe. I think that those were kind of taken out of context when we're talking about Zach Robinson talking about how Algier is going to have a big role. If you read the whole quote, it really doesn't. I mean, I basically asked about Algier, and it's like, yeah, I'm not going to talk bad about this guy. Of course I like Algier. Because when they asked about Bijan, they said, yeah, he's Christian McCaffrey in this offense. So clearly there's a disconnect because Tyler Joe can't have this massive role on offense while also Bijan Robinson in the Christian McCaffrey role. So there's a disconnect there. But I still like Algier from hey, in certain game script where the Falcons are up, yeah, he's going to get the rock. Why? They're not going to throw Bijan out there to eat clock in the second halves of games, and that's not his job. Algier is meant for that. So I think that he's going to have a fair share of spike weeks, and then you have that contingent upside of if anything does happen to Bijan. I know Bijan left practice, I believe, on Monday. Who was getting all the first team reps? It was Tyler Algier. So he's proven at the NFL level, 1,000-yard rusher as a rookie. So I think he has a lot of upside.
Interesting to go back and forth about those two things, right? Looking at a guy like Marshawn Lloyd versus Algier. Both guys right now in the depth chart, not the number ones, but certainly you can make cases for them being productive this season. After Algier, Jalen Wright goes, then Dalton Schultz at 1208. I took Dontavian Wicks at 1209. If I don't get Watson, I usually get Wicks. One of those two guys in Green Bay, then Caleb Williams. Mason, you took Khalil Shakir, then Khalil Herbert went. The Ravens defense off the board. Jerry Jeudy, back to you. So let's talk about Shakir and Jeudy. Are you worried at all about the knee? And are you worried also that you have Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir? How does that work in your brain for your roster?
I think the Bills specifically can be the highest scoring offense in the NFL this season. And when we're getting down here to the end of the 12th, the beginning of the 13th, this is about the range of we are more likely than not cutting these guys within the first 4 weeks. These are going to be the guys that can potentially be sent over to the waiver wire. So I'm looking for guys that I think we're going to get clarity on at the beginning of the season. Shakir may be one of those options where he potentially comes out in Buffalo and he's the number 3, he's the number 4 guy, but also it's a very uncertain depth chart. We could possibly see Shakir at the top of the league in targets at the beginning of the top of the Buffalo depth chart and targets at the beginning of the season. So we have Allen. I'm fine. Continue to go all in on this Bills offense. And then with Jeudy, it is a little concerning with the Ayuk trade rumors. But like I said, when we're getting here to the final 3 picks of these teams, especially when you're going to be rostering a defense here as well, it's really the final 2 picks. We really need to be thinking about guys that could potentially hit in a big time way and we can keep them. Or if they don't hit within the first 3 weeks, I'm fine sending them to waivers.
Yeah, and speaking of those defenses, again, you mentioned about some of these picks at the end we're going to be cutting. I'd rather go out there and take a defense that's going to get me some big time points. So I went out there, and after the Ravens went and AD Mitchell went, you took Judy there in between. I took the 49ers defense and Jermaine Burton at 1305. Yaya, I can only assume, is at some point going to take another wide receiver. We don't know. But Yaya did, in all fairness, eventually get some running backs on this team, but we'll see what that looks like. Erickson, I know you're up in 5 seconds here. What is in the queue as Dameon Pierce just goes off the board at 1306 before you?
I'm looking at wide receivers and I'm trying to figure out how to balance out an upside play or because I'm not looking for immediate production. So again, kind of like Mason alluded to, is there a way that I can figure out what this guy's role is on this offense? Is he just out there to run routes or is he going to actually see targets? So for me, I'm going with Darnell Mooney. So again, he plays on explosive Atlanta Falcons offense. He's been kind of written off after a really injury plagued season last year, but he got paid in free agency. Saw this 2 years ago with Christian Kirk, got paid. People thought it was an overpay, and then he balled out last year. Jacoby Myers thought it was an overpay. What happened? He balled out. Could Darnell Mooney be that next guy? I think it's possible. So I think taking a shot on him here to see how things play out in week 1, I think it's worth it.
I agree. I drafted him with my second to last pick on Saturday for all the same reasons. And I was just on with Jake Seeley on his show discussing that. And we were talking about, look, it's going to be London. It's going to be Pitts. I'm sure Bijan's going to be great, but there's going to be some other guys there who are going to get some work. Why not a Darnell Mooney? Maybe it's not a guy that he's not a wide receiver 3 necessarily in fantasy, but he's a guy you could possibly start in some bye weeks. Yeah, I think you probably could. Or if there are some injuries, could he get some more volume? Sure, absolutely. After Mooney goes, Ricky Pearsall to you, T-Bro. So I guess the big question is, do you think Ayuk is getting moved? It seems like that things are moving towards that direction. And if so, how good could Ricky Pearsall be early on in 2024?
We just talked about taking upside shots. Ricky Pearsall is the perfect example to that entire conversation late. And yes, I've been there, still there. I think there's a huge chance that Ayuk gets moved. And now we're hearing more buzz about that the closer that we get through the preseason and week 1. And Ricky Pearsall, I mean, look, this is a consolidated offense. You know, we might want to talk about the passing volume, how that all shakes out. Pearsall could be one of those guys. Like, how many times do we get to see this, guys? George Kittle can miss time. Deebo Samuel has been banged up at various points in his career. We could see this easily happen to where Pearsall is elevated, not throwing Christian McCaffrey, although he's a huge part of their passing offense, but he's elevated at some point of the season where he's fighting to be the number 2 in that passing offense and one of the highest scoring, most efficient offenses in the NFL. So shooting for upside, Pearsall should be the poster boy for this.
Makes a lot of sense, that's for sure. After you went ahead and selected Pearsall, Gabe Davis, then the Jets defense, Cowboys defense, Jahan Dotson, Eli Mitchell, one of my favorite late round picks, goes to start the 14th round at 1402. Tua, then Rashad Bateman, Kamani Vidal goes at 1404. Then you took Javon Baker. Look at you, D-Bro, Mr. Patriot. All of a sudden, you're making me optimistic about the season.
What could go wrong?
Stop it. Just don't give me hope, because that's the worst thing I can have.
I mean, shooting for upside. What we talked about? Mason brought it up. Like, probably these late picks, one of these is going to get cut to the waiver wire. I'm shooting the shot on who can be the wide receiver 1 for this offense this year. And I think we're sleeping on the upside of whoever that is. Javon Baker, pull up anything. Search his name on social media. Pull up any clip you want, because there's tons of them where he's been making highlight reel plays the entirety of camp. That talent is real. I think he can lead this team in targets this year if it's not Pop Douglas.
All right, there you have it, everybody. Erickson, after Baker went, you took Michael Wilson from Arizona at 1406. Your thoughts on Wilson?
I mean, what if Marvin Harrison's just not as good as everyone thinks he is?
I mean, sacrilege. Get out.
I mean, no, God forbid.
Get out.
Because if you say anything bad about Marvin Harrison Jr., this is what happens. People just doesn't know ball.
They say, boo this man.
Not in my draft room. Not in my draft room.
Well, we'll see, because we haven't seen him play yet. All I know is I saw Michael Wilson ball out at the end of last year with Kyler Murray. So we'll see what happens.
Just so everybody knows, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be amazing. You know, just like when, Jamar Chase comes in as 1,400 yards in his rookie year, just like we have, guys like Justin Jefferson come in their rookie year and have 1,400 yards. It's going to be the next one. Just get in now.
Neither of which were first-round picks in fantasy the years they were drafted.
You know what, though? But maybe we're learning, because Marvin Harrison, I think Mason talked about not liking being at the turn. If you give me Marvin Harrison at the turn, I'm taking him every single time. Every single time he's going to be on my roster. Roshan Johnson goes after Bucky Irving, and then I took Jalen McMillan, again, upside, Xavier Legette, then Audric Estime, Adam Thielen, Quentin Johnson, the Browns defense. Estime, Mason, talk to me about your thoughts on him. Mace, you're on mute. Mason, you're on mute.
I don't know if he's any good. He's had some buzz in camp. I'm really just shooting for someone that we can take that potentially goes through, has a role week 1. If he doesn't, cool, I'm fine going ahead and cutting him.
Okay, you're okay going ahead and cutting him potentially. And then you took the Cleveland Browns defense. I want to talk about the Cleveland Browns offense, Mace. I want to get your take on this because this is an offense that I am running like just to the hills. I want nothing to do with them. I can't figure them out. The health of Nick Chubb scares me. The quarterback play scares me. Who's playing quarterback at any given moment is anybody's guess. There's so many concerns that I have potentially here with this roster. Do you find yourself also running away from the Cleveland Browns? Do you think this is a team where you just can't invest, or do you think it's an opportunity because of all of the question marks that I just threw out there?
Couple different things. I know you're a big sportsbook guy looking at implied team totals. The Browns throughout the course of the entire year projected to be the 18th highest scoring offense, so kind of middle of the road. I've been drafting a ton of best ball teams so far where their Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford are so cheap. You can take them at the 11-12 turn and lock in all the Browns touches, especially with the Foreman injury now. So I personally have drafted some Browns. I agree, though, from a regular redraft perspective, I don't know if the passing volume is going to be there to get super excited about these guys, but it will be very interesting if, for whatever reason, Ayuk actually does get dealt to Cleveland, how the offense projects out at that point.
After the Pittsburgh Steelers go at 1503, I took Wan'Dale Robinson at 1504. Again, just looking for upside. Somebody else besides Malik Neighbors, right? We're playing the late round game of somebody else besides ... Chiefs defense, New Orleans defense, the Seahawks defense to Erickson. Why the Seahawks, Andrew? Give it to everybody.
Because they have a really good favorable schedule, which I, for some reason, am not able to pull up right now. But at least I'm hoping I remember it correctly. I didn't pick the wrong defense. But
nope, you're right. You're right.
Who did
they
they
start
play?
out with the Broncos, Patriots, then they get the Dolphins, Lions. But
I mean, back-to-back weeks
good.
against Bo Nix and Jacoby Brissett. How can you do better than that?
The Chicago Bears defense to D, bro. Why the Bears defense, D?
They get to play inaccurate and turnover-prone Will Levis in the first week of the season. So loving it.
Mims goes. I love the early defense, guys. I love you guys. I am such a
because it works. What do you mean?
I know, but also
it's like, you can't do that.
You know what? Yeah, that works. You know what else works? Getting defenses like the Cowboys, like the Ravens, and like the 49ers that every week.
And then Joey's streaming somebody else over them by week 3.
No, never. That's not true. Look at any of my rosters, my friend. Any of my rosters. I came out with a B, respectable. That's how I felt about this draft. I took Prescott too soon. I should have paid more attention to the insights. Young City wins the draft. Congratulations, Young City. You're the big winner. Derek Brown, you came in 3rd. Yaya with all the wide receivers at 4th. I was 5th. Then you had, let's see, Andrew Erickson. Where are you here? I'm trying to look.
You got to scroll down, but
you got to.
I'm not as low as Mason, but I'm pretty low down there.
That's
will be as low as I am.
At 9, let's look at the expert opinions here and see who liked and hated our drafts. Joe Pisapia gave me an A, 94 out of 100. Our good friend Brandon Murchison, who I love Murch, who was in on one of these mock drafts a couple weeks ago, saw him at Flex. He gave me an A2. In terms of people who didn't like my draft, well, that's okay. You don't have to like everything. D-Bro, who liked your draft and hated your draft? And then we'll break down your roster.
Well, first of all, give the bronze medal to me. Really happy to be on the podium. Really enjoying this, especially after giving myself a 94.
Though. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, still, it was pretty while I was in the air. Dalton Del Don gave me a 97. I gave myself a 94. Merch gave me a 93. It's a good time. Kevin Steele giving me a 90 here with highlighting Drake London, Pacheco, and Downs picks, man. I'm just loving life right now.
Okay, let's see how much you love your team, D-Bro. Anthony Richardson, Isaiah Pacheco, Brian Robinson. Interesting start there with Robinson as your number 2 running back. Do you feel confident in that?
I do. I feel very, very confident in Robinson.
Because the wide receiver room is pretty solid here. Jefferson, Drake London, 2 number 1s. Chris Godwin, a guy back to the slot, could be very good. But The reason why the wide receiver 3 is a little bit on the weaker side is because you went early tight end with Trey McBride, and I think you'll take that switch every single day. Love the McBride pick there. Jonathan Brooks is your flex, but obviously not starting the season. That's just where he's grading out. The Bears defense, then Jerome Ford, Pop Douglas, Downs, Marshawn Lloyd, Pearsall, Baker. Debro, I look at this roster, and if Downs and Douglas hit, you make up any deficit there potentially at the flex spot or wide receiver 3. Do you see things the same way?
I do, man. And I like the complexion of how I kind of built the running back room out after Isaiah Pacheco. If he is that true hero RB and he pays off, then I'm really just trying to piece together RB2. I feel good about B-Rob there, but I also have the upside swings for Jonathan Brooks late season, Jerome Ford, maybe it's early season or late season, depending on what Nick Chubb does or doesn't do. And then the wild card of Marshawn Lloyd, and my love for him is well known.
My love for Mason Dodd is well known too. Let's look at his roster. Josh Allen, the big QB there. Devon Achane, Josh Jacobs, a little bit of country, a little rock and roll there, it feels like in that backfield, right, Mason? You got the big, sexy Devon Achane pick, right? And then you've got Josh Jacobs, the theoretical steady Eddie. Is that how you see this backfield?
Yeah, I mean, essentially just locking in touches with Jacobs and sending up a prayer that Achane can see volume this year.
Let's hope. You know what? I was a little skeptical in terms of Achane. I'm starting to warm up now. Maybe I'm just getting a little bit more comfortable with the risk. I know the ADP is high, but man, the upside is there. And, we have the size conversation about him, but if I'm going to say I love Jahmyr Gibbs, then I've got to say that I have to be confident in Achane too. Then CeeDee Lamb, Xavier Worthy, Calvin Ridley. Then you have Dalton Kincaid at tight end. Again, another one where you went earlier on tight end. Addison is your flex. So let's talk about the wide receivers here, Mace. Lamb, Worthy, Ridley, Addison. This is an interesting group because there's certainly upside here. Lamb is clearly the alpha dog. Do you worry there in terms of maybe weekly floor with these guys, considering what Addison's playing with a quarterback and Ridley and maybe where Xavier Worthy is in terms of the target share?
I think if you told me that I had to play Xavier Worthy at wide receiver 3 through the entire year, I would be terrified. If you told me maybe it's Worthy, maybe it's Keon Coleman, you really only need one to hit, there, I feel a lot more comfortable with it. While I completely admit both these guys have incredibly low floors, if you look at just the wide range of outcomes that they're dealing with, I think if we have multiple players with this kind of profile and only needing one to hit, I feel pretty comfortable with it.
The rest of the team there, Cleveland Browns defense, then Charbonnet on the love the bench here. Charbonnet, Coleman, Corum, Khalil Shakir, Estime, and Judy bringing up the rear, but everybody knows how I feel about the Browns. I'm not going to say too much about Jerry Judy. Andrew Erickson, who loved and hated your team out of curiosity?
I liked my team. I gave myself a 90 out of 100. And Joe Orico, one of my thread bros,
friend of the show. Joe.
he gave me a 97 out of 100. So that makes me feel warm and fuzzy.
We gotta get Joe on the show.
He's a great guy. But I don't feel great about my draft. I mean, I went with the superhero RB, and I think I just put that cape on and I flew too close to the sun, drafting running backs. And I got burned because my receivers are just not good. 10th overall in terms of the
Well,
ranking.
in all fairness, Erickson, Yaya did take all of them right before you.
Well, I think that his team or his or her team, I think is kind of interesting. I kind of wanted to talk about it real quick because they started with 7 wide receivers after drafting a running back with Bijan Robinson. But then when you look at what they did, getting Jaden Daniels, great late round quarterback, getting Brock Bowers, a great late round tight end, getting Chuba Hubbard as their RB2. That's exactly how you execute the hero RB strategy when you are waiting in this long, waiting for Chuba Hubbard's going to be the week 1 starter for the Carolina Panthers. That's a guy he can start in his lineup. So he wasn't reaching for another starting running back. So whatever he or she, kudos to you. Kudos to you.
I don't know about that though, because I look at the build and as theoretically interesting as it is, some of the personnel is where I question it because Pittman I love.
Yeah, I think the personnel. Okay, I think that's up for debate. But I'm speaking positionally. I'm speaking positionally.
No, theoretically, I think positionally makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Getting Daniels late, Bowers late, the upside there. You're swinging it at easily replaceable quarterbacks. If Jaden Daniels doesn't, you can find guys off the waiver wire if Daniels is disappointing. But Diggs, again, let's see what's left in that tank and let's see how he works in with this team. Cooper Kupp. Sure, everything sounds good now, but everything is good now this time of year at camp. I love TMC. I love Watson. Those are 2 guys I'm drafting everywhere, so I like that. But certainly an interesting build. I'm curious what people think about it. Drop your comments below about Yaya's team. Your team, though, Andrew, Kyler Murray, Breece Hall, Rashad White. I love this start here. Then Jalen Waddle, Christian Kirk, Deontay Johnson. In a full PPR, especially with Mark Andrews as the big tight end, I think you're actually being kind of rough on yourself. Debro, do you think Andrew's being a little tough on himself here? Because you've got a lot of volume between Waddle, Kirk, Johnson, and then Andrews, who's basically kind of like theoretically another wide receiver, right, Debro?
Yeah, I think you're being a little bit hard on yourself. Like, I like your team a lot. I think that the big part about it as far as like projection, and maybe this is just us versus consensus, but like I am much, much higher on Christian Kirk and Deontay Johnson. I think you are too, Erickson, and like on their projections and how good they could be for this season. So looking at them as your wide receiver 2 and 3, I'm very comfortable. I think the only thing I would have changed with the team build is with you going with Brees and having the hero RB, I probably would have taken a wide receiver instead of going Rashad White and punted RB2 down the road a little bit. That's the only thing I changed, dude.
The rest of the roster here, Jalen Warren, Seahawks defense, then Samuel Dobbs, J.K. Dobbins, Algier, Mooney, and Wilson. Speaking of flying too close to the sun, Debro, Andrew Erickson, went up 14-7 in that first Madden game we played, and then I ended up winning 28-14. Then in game 2, kicked the last second field goal to win. He did the gritty on me after that second touchdown that first game, and then I just lost my mind. And then in game 3, when Andrew had one too many cocktails, Kyron Williams scored 7 touchdowns on him. 7. So
Wait,
if there's one man who
where's the screenshot? Where's the Pacheco-esque screenshot? I haven't seen it.
I'm going to get my phone to take the screenshot of it. He immediately quits the game at the end. Does not let me get
this player has logged off the game.
He didn't want you to get it.
You son of a! I couldn't believe he did that. Kyron Williams with the 7 touchdowns on him. It was unbelievable.
It's all a blur to me, honestly.
Grittying in my bar room on the 75-inch TV in front of it, just like doing his little dance there after Tyreek Hill has that big touchdown. Talk about too close to the sun. The Joey P team. Dak Prescott at QB, Derrick Henry, Zamir White, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, T. Higgins. Ooh, that's a sexy group. Evan Ingram, George Pickens at the flex, 49ers defense, Tyler Lockett on the bench with McLaughlin, Benson, Wicks, Wandale, and Jalen McMillan. Erickson, or Icarus, however you want to call you. What do you think of this roster, Andrew?
Your team, let me see it again. Okay, so I think that it's good. It's solid. Look, you got more running backs that don't catch passes. It's PPR. Come on, man.
Yeah, but I got wide receivers that catch a whole lot. I feel
okay,
like.
But I'm just saying, Derek. I'm going to combine for
more
catches.
Build up,
I know.
Zamir White, Derrick Henry. Those guys don't catch passes, so I think that.
I don't care. They score touchdowns. That's all that matters.
Solid B-.
It was like it's a good.
Still
team,
higher than my grade.
If only Kyron Williams was on it, maybe it would be better. You would have hated it if it was Kyron Williams on. Mason, what do you think of this roster build? What are your thoughts here on this?
I think I need to play with the draft wizard more and figure out how to replicate what you did so I don't get a C- next time.
There you go. Debro, your thoughts on this team before we head out here today, especially this wide receiver. Look, Amon-Ra, Nico, T. Higgins, Pickens. That's a pretty good group of 4 right there.
Yep. I think it's good, man. I like the team that you built. I think Ingram is a little bit of a step down. I like taking him where you took him is basically saying, okay, he needs to be close or in that elite tier. I'm a little bit further down on Ingram, just looking at the splits between him and him and Kirk when he was out last year. And then Dak Prescott, I think those are the only 2 picks. But, I mean, the volume you locked up around those wide receivers with Henry and Zamir, I love it, as well as the upside shots you took on Benson and McLaughlin. Like, I like this team a lot, Joey.
Hey, look, we are all works in progress, just like everybody else. We're trying to get ready for the season. You get ready. Download the Draft Wizard app. I'm telling you, Erickson and I just nonstop on the train, mock drafting. It was so much fun, and we got there and we were prepared for those drafts. Make sure you're prepared. Sync your leagues for free right now over at FantasyPros. Get in the Draft Wizard, start going to the mock draft lobby, join our Discord, fantasypros.com/chat. There's lots of ways to get involved. And again, free mock draft Mondays on our Discord, fantasypros.com/chat. Join us, mock around with us. I'm telling you, there's constant mock drafts going on. Get ready. Mason Dodd, amazing. Always great to have you here on the show. Go subscribe to the Flock Fantasy Network too, the best there is. Mason Dodd. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. Make sure you drop your comments below. Tell us who won the draft, whose team you love the most, and why is it mine? Again, for Derek Brown, for Mason Dodd and Andrew Erickson, and maybe for Kyron Williams, that'll do it for us. We'll see you next time, kids. Happy mocking.